Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the potential economic fallout of a hypothetical trade war initiated by President Trump, as analyzed in a compelling piece from the Council on Foreign Relations. It's a complex issue, but we'll break it down, step by step. The core issue revolves around proposed tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, right?
Absolutely. And the potential impact is huge. The article highlights that nearly half of all U.S. imports, over $1.3 trillion, originate from these three countries. A 15% reduction in overall U.S. imports is projected, a significant hit, even if the Tax Foundation estimates a $100 billion annual increase in federal tax revenue. But that's just one side of the coin, isn't it?
Exactly. The article paints a much more nuanced picture. While increased tax revenue is mentioned, the negative economic consequences are far more substantial. We're talking about disrupted supply chains, increased business costs, job losses, potentially hundreds of thousands, and ultimately, higher consumer prices. It's a real economic domino effect. Think about it. The automotive, energy, and food sectors would be particularly hard hit.
Yeah, the gas prices could spike, potentially by 50 cents a gallon in the Midwest, given Canada and Mexico supply over 70% of our crude oil imports. And the auto industry? A $3,000 increase on the price of a car? That's a massive blow to consumers.
You're right. And don't forget the grocery bill. Mexico is a major supplier of fresh produce to the U.S., and those tariffs would directly impact food prices. The article emphasizes that while the U.S. is less reliant on trade than some other industrialized nations, the impact on Canada and Mexico would be far more severe, given that trade constitutes about 70% of their GDPs. It's a huge asymmetry of impact.
That's a crucial point. The article uses charts to illustrate how heavily Canada and Mexico rely on the U.S. market. Over 80% of Mexico's exports go to the U.S., and a similar percentage holds true for Canada. A 25% tariff could slash Mexico's GDP by 16%, according to Bloomberg Economics. The auto industry in both countries would be devastated.
It's a pretty grim picture, isn't it? But the article also points out that China's dependence on U.S. trade is comparatively less significant. Their economy has diversified over the past 2 decades, reducing the impact of potential tariffs. Their trade with other nations has increased, lessening the blow. Interesting. Right?
I see. Interesting. However, the article doesn't ignore the possibility of retaliation. Mexico, for example, could impose its own tariffs, and the USMCA might even allow it. We've seen this before. Remember the retaliatory tariffs imposed by Mexico and Canada in 2018? This time around, U.S. fuel exporters, automakers, and pharmaceutical producers could be particularly vulnerable. It could be a real trade war.
You're absolutely right. The article highlights how retaliatory tariffs would disproportionately affect manufacturing-heavy states in the U.S., like Texas, New Mexico, Ohio, and Maine. It's a complex web of interconnected economies, and the potential consequences are far-reaching. It's a fascinating and concerning analysis.
It certainly is. The article concludes by suggesting that currency fluctuations could also play a role, potentially mitigating some of the impact. But the overall message is clear. These tariffs could have profound and potentially devastating economic consequences for all involved. A very sobering analysis indeed.
Absolutely. And that's a wrap for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for joining us for this in-depth look at the potential economic ramifications of a hypothetical trade war. We hope you found this insightful. Goodbye, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.